Hey, welcome back for another coffee chat. Scott, joining me again for round two.
Hey, keep it coming.
All right, all right. So, we're going to talk about something that is really, really important in this area is individuals who work in the plants.
Yep.
And we have seen some really good success stories from individuals who have put in 15, 20, 30 plus years at one company.
Right.
Now, with that being said, when we sit down with them and we take a look at their pensions and their 401ks and their investments, what are some things that normally stand out to you that would potentially be a benefit for them? And then we're going to talk what potentially might be a con next. What are some good things that you see, and then what are some bad things that we see too?
Well, I mean, in all retirement plans, what you're going to get is you get you get your set limited investment options. So these certain mutual funds, maybe some ETFs, and of course in the plans you're most likely going to get company stocks in there as well. With that comes the company covers those charges. So a lot of times in the 401k plans, in all 401k plans, from an expense standpoint, it's extremely inexpensive, but your options are very, very limited. So that's kind of the pro is from an expense standpoint is, yes, it's less expensive, but you don't really get guidance. You don't get advice. You don't have someone local you can talk to. So those are kind of more of the cons. But from a positive standpoint, I'd say, from an expense standpoint, is probably the biggest positive.
That, and one of the things that we're seeing from the plants is pensions are going away. But the plants themselves, those companies, those large institutional companies, they've been keeping those going. Now, we can't say they'll be there forever,
Right.
but most industries have shied away from that. But the oil and gas space and the chemical space has kept on to that. And we sit down with people who are 1 or 2 years out of retirement, and they get in that pension packet, and it is this big. And there are a million different choices of how they can go about taking that. What it would be a benefit of them sitting down with a financial advisor to explore what would be the best pick for them inside that pension?
That's we deal with that a lot, and that's the one thing that we want to do. So in addition to your investments, when you come in, if you have a pension, bring the pension. That's what we tell everyone, because we want to look at it, your goals, your current living situation, your future living situation, and what options are offered. Because some companies only offer 2 or 3 options. Some offer 7 options, and up to 7 options. So you usually have your lump sum, or you can take it single life yourself. You can have certain percentages to your spouse. Sometimes you can add a child. Sometimes you can't. So there's different stipulations we want to sit down and look at. Given the situation, saying, okay, here's what would fit you best. And then we also want to look and see, are there any other products, vehicles, investments outside of here that maybe could do the same thing as your pension, but give you maybe flexibility, access, and then almost make it even last longer than a pension. Because, we've had different situations where sometimes at a certain particular point in your life, maybe that single life made sense. Well, 5 years down the road, if you're, happen to get remarried again or in a situation like that, a child needs extra money, you can't turn on that life payment and get extra money out. So, or maybe you get remarried. There's different situations where once we lock in, before we lock into that long-term commitment of making that decision, because once it's made, it's made. We want to look at some other options and other vehicles.
So really just really educate the client, and then if there's a way to show or give them more flexibility,
Yes.
then that's probably a good option.
Yeah, more flexibility and more options is what we really want to sit down
Yeah,
and
you
look
can
at.
never go wrong with that. Now, one thing that we always see inside those accounts is we'll see a very, very concentrated position of the company stock, and that's because the company does an employee match and this and that. And my dad or my father-in-law worked at the plants, and he said never sell this. So now I've got $800 to $1 million of one company. Well, most of those companies pay great dividends, and that's one of the good things about having that big position. But what's a real concern of just having a majority of your assets in really just one thing?
But they've always taken care of me.
They have.
And they have. And the biggest concern with having that is, I get it. You can pick one of the big companies around here, and like you said, they pay a great dividend. That's a retirement income stream. That is probably the most obvious example of diversification. A lot of clients saw it, during COVID when it first started, what happened to the oil industry, and they're just now starting to get back to where they were pre-pandemic. Some of them aren't even close to getting back.
Yeah.
But we've seen the value dip. And where we have an issue with that and why we recommend diversifying is because if during that dip, they're still going to pay a dividend. There's still that check still going to come in the mail. But God forbid something happen where you have to dig in, sell something at that low point. So instead of $100 a share for a stock, now it's at $50 a share. You're selling at 50% less than what it was just to cover that unexpected expense. Diversifying helps kind of getting out of that one solid company, spreading across other sectors, tech, financials, something like that to diversify. Not saying get rid of all of that stock, but at least let's take a look at your full financial picture.
Yep.
And maybe we want to cut out a little bit, half of it. And maybe it does make sense where we need to diversify more of that. We won't know until we sit down with it.
Exactly. And the big concern is, well, I don't want to lose that income stream. Well, you necessarily don't have to. Now, we don't have the solution today on this podcast, but sitting down and really jumping in there and seeing, okay, just how much risk can I diversify out of? Because when you got that big consolidated, concentrated position, I mean, there's business risk, right? And then there's the industry risk. So being able to slowly start to take yourself from there. Now, another thing too is that plant workers, for I love them because those are some of the hardest working individuals out there. I mean, most of them takes them 30, 45 minutes to get to work. They're going to put in that 8 to 12 hour day, and then they're going to hightail it back on the interstate coming back home. So we're looking at 12 to 14 hours. Now they're going to be retired, right? And I used to tell them, well, hey, man, if I'm just going to live at the camp. I'm going to hunt and fish all day. I'm now retired. But I think those individuals almost need a retirement plan more than someone who may have just worked 8 hours a day because they've got more time to fill. And that time fill, we need to figure out what it's going to cost, right? And so to add to that, what you see there, a retirement plan for plant workers can show them a few things, but what are some things that you would maybe want to focus on with those individuals?
Honestly, it's a few things. Like, to your point, there's an expense. There's stuff to do to fill the day. Yeah, you can hunt, you can fish, but if it's raining, if it's doing something, then you can't quite pull it off. One thing that I tell clients is, too, what about travel? Because in addition to this, unless you're single, there's usually someone else at home that now y'all are going to have to be spending a lot more time, 8 to 12 to 14 hours a day together to hang out again. So that's the biggest step is realizing, hey, not only from the person retiring, but maybe someone who has been home the whole time or has been home for a few years, maybe retired early, y'all have to start spending more time together. So that's a real big conversation to get ready, in my opinion. 2 is really sit down and being honest with yourself of, okay, here's what I want to do, but what happens on those down days? Some of our clients will probably be just fine sitting inside watching TV, going outside checking, maybe doing a garden, doing something like that to use up their time. Some of our clients, though, kind of lie to themselves. They've been going, and when they get home after that 14-hour day, they go out and work in their shop, they go out and work on their boat, they go out and do something else. They stay busy all the time.
All day.
So those are the clients we want to sit down and say, okay, from a financial standpoint, you're good. From a mental standpoint, where are we going to fill these gaps? What are you going to do? Let's be honest with yourself. In addition to that, get a hobby. I've had clients that have gone back to work at lumber companies here locally, not to say any names, but just because they like a wood shop and they get employee discounts. So little things like that, whether it's working at Best Buy or something like that because you're a tech guy.
Right.
Finding something to fill those gaps.
That is excellent. And Scott, I always enjoy having you on Coffee and Chat. It's extremely educational when I get to sit down with you one-on-one and kind of dive into unique questions. And one thing that I would ask the audience is if there's a topic or if there's something that you want Scott and I to talk about, give us a ring, shoot us an email, respond to the podcast. Yep. We'd love to tailor and focus this towards areas that people want to hear about.
Always.
So
keeps it interesting.
Keeps it interesting. Always a pleasure. Hopefully we'll have you back for a third one.
Hope so.
Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy.